Welcome, welcome, everybody. You have reached Elephant in the Room, ETR for short. I am your host, Maya In Situ, and this is our fourth episode in season two. And this is our 10th episode, though, of all of the episodes. And so now we're going to get into our spiritual show. Because remember, I promised every 10th episode will be a spiritual show. So let's get that on and going. Let me just check my feedback loop, make sure you all can hear me. I hope you can. Thanks for coming. Sounds good. All right. So, as I'm navigating through the shows. It's so interesting that I find our spiritual shows to probably be the most challenging because there's so much information to share, and I have to learn to pace myself because there's no reason to rush. We can delve into as many topics as we need to. And as time goes by, if there's a need to talk more spiritual than some of the other talks, then I will begin to do so. But at this time, I'm just making it every fifth show to try to delve into spiritual matters. I'm just going to do one here, theme here, and that's just to notify the community that I'm here. Some people keep up, some don't, and that's okay. It's still new. My ideals are fresh and may not be agreeable to everyone, and I'm okay with that too, because we're all at different places in time, um, and we don't have to necessarily agree with each other. Uh, but that's something that I want us to work on is the ability to not agree and still be able to listen and read and either affirm one way or the other. Yes, I'm going on the right path because this is what I don't agree with, or affirm based upon yes, I am traveling the right path because this is more in the line of what I want. And some of the things that's been out here in the conscious community currently is that um, the uniting of people of color, the uniting of Black people, so that we can begin to work on things. But this dogma, this religious separation, has really stopped us from being able to achieve. And so that's part of my spiritual um, enlightenment and guidance that I want to be able to provide to be able to disagree. And it's so interesting because I just had a disagreement on Twitter with a gentleman, and I don't even know if he realizes it or not, but I'm always in tune with what the original conversation was about, and I'll read it to you all. The original message from a young lady that was feeling a certain kind of way from all these things that's been going on. What have we had? Let's see. We've had Kanye choosing sides. We've had Bill Cosby's conviction, and it feels like some other things has gone on. Of course, there's been more killings. Unfortunately, this is a weekly theme. And Meek Mill's getting out of jail, and so we have all these dynamics and all these pools of energy on us. And a lot of us who are more into religious dogma don't want to address the energy part of that. And that's something I want to address with my audience. I want us to be able to sift through that. And if you choose to still live within a religious pathway, that's fine. But what I would like to see happen is an interpretation of that. So let's drift for a moment. I'm gonna push this on here so that my Twitter audience knows I'm on here and my Facebook audience knows I'm on here. So just bear with me while I do that. We have here. This is. So again, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope that you are able to learn something from what I'm learning. Because remember, I don't present myself as an expert. I present myself as someone as a student of life. I'm continuously walking through life, and so I don't have all the answers, and I never will. Even if I receive a certain balance and arrival, it just means that I'm willing to learn more and absorb more into my essence. And so, oh, and I have an announcement to make too. I'll just do this real quick. That's done. Our mind can get pulled in so many directions, and focus is not an easy thing. It requires practice of skill. I'm out here in the elements, and so my allergies may begin to react because the elements are that much more powerful than me. So they're going to make me succumb to them. So let's unpin episode 3. If you ever go onto my Twitter page, you'll notice that I pinned my most recent episode. And so you can always access it. So I continuously pin and unpin. So now we have the new episode on here. Let's refresh that, make sure it did what I wanted. And the vermin love my blood. Is there something in my blood that they like to suck? because they love to bite me. Always have. They do my younger son like that. My older son, he'll go just fine. But my younger son and I, we suffer because they really love to bite me. All right, so the announcement. Oh, I didn't do Facebook. I'm sorry. Facebook. I love the ability to create as I show. It's my last frame picture. And that's the last frame picture. I'm like mid talking, so I don't really like it because I'm kind of vain. But it's okay. I'll get over it. Uh-oh, we're going through some input and output, but I've noticed that even when it does that, it does keep me on, so we're still here. And I kind of got this music in the background. This is a full chakra hearing, spa music with binaural beats and isochronic tones. And so I like to listen to the chakra music. I hope you can hear it because it's coming from my phone. It's not very loud, but I kind of wanted it to be in the background. Okay, so almost done here, and then we'll be able to get into it. I need to spell it right first. I spelled that wrong. I'm gonna have to fix that. I just realized, I'm like, what did I do there? Sometimes when you're just going along, you put things on. I know how to spell that, but I did not do it in that case. There we go. All right, so I got the green line, so hopefully there's no choppiness and there's uh, more continuous live stream. And I'm gonna write my camera off because it looks like it might be a little shady. Let's see if that helps. Yeah. I know it's gross, y'all. Okay. Ew, she used saliva. It might just be my actual screen that's a little fuzzy, but I may have made it a little bit better. Okay, I think we're almost good here. I spelled manifestation wrong on that. No, I didn't. I just spelled it wrong on this. Let me see if I can fix this on my YouTube. I am a speller person, so if I spell something wrong, I don't like it. Yeah, change the save. Yes. Manifestation or manifestation, right? All right, y'all. I think I'm ready. All right. So, announcement. So, over the weekend, I went to a sickle cell empowerment meeting, and this is a foundation that is ran by Mark Thomas. And Mark Thomas created this foundation because he was also um, plagued with sickle cell disease, and he decided that the foundation would be a good idea to help bring those together who are suffering from this affliction. And so it's been running for 21 years now. This year, and they take the kids to camp, which my son has participated in because yes, my youngest son also I don't like to say suffer, but he manages his sickle cell disease. It is his current status. And we had the opportunity to visit with and be conferenced with um, Dr. Wanda Sherney, and I should say Whitney Sherney because her father has a legacy that she holds on to, so it's in her name. And so she says her ancestor name by putting in her I think it's Witten. I think it is Sherman. I'm not sure. I gotta look that up because I don't like get people name wrong. But anyway, the great thing about this powerful sister during the events, and I have to put it up. I put the link up here. I'll create a link and put it on here. And I haven't even done last week's because I've just been so busy with school and classes, and it's getting crunch time for the finals. But I'm surviving and doing well. I'm thankful for that. But the good part about that meeting with her is she used to see my son back in Michigan in Detroit. So she traveled from Detroit and came down. Yes, Witten Sherney, excuse me, Dr. Witten Sherney. And she came down and she gave an awesome conference. I just couldn't help but to be biased and thinking like, well, us Detroiters really know how to give a presentation. It's not that other people don't, but I was just being very biased. But she gave an awesome presentation. She's been doing this for a long time, I believe over 30 years, if I remember her quoting correctly. But she actually is a general practitioner. I did not know that. I thought her designation was hematologist all this time, but she took a certification in hematology as part of uh, her education and training. And she did a phenomenal job. She was the dynamic spirit that I remember. She, at the time, tried to get my son involved in some case study that was available. Um, and we declined it at the time because it was only 6 months and they were starting the trials in children for this particular medication that is offered to people with sickle cell disease on an adult basis, and they began to offer it for children. And so she was there. She gave a great speech, great slideshow, and I was able to take some pictures with her. So I'll try to put those pictures up too, so you all can see her. But she's just an enlightening force to me. And the great part about her meeting, something that she introduced, which was like an affirmation for me. You know how things happen, and you're like, yeah, I feel like the pathway that I'm choosing is where I'm supposed to be. She actually um, did a ceremony of the pouring of libations, and she explained it to the audience and invited those to come up and pour libations for their family, which is part of the spiritual show. I'm going to go ahead and put up that video just so you can see the pouring of the libations portion. I'll probably include the sickle cell video in a whole nother um, um, show that I might do on medical diseases and how to manage them, which happens to be a part of my field of study. But it was just so awesome to see her do that. I mean, I just got a great feeling watching that. And I was like, oh my goodness. Um, this wonderful woman is introducing a concept of African spirituality practiced across many countries on the continent, the pouring of libations, which is rooted mostly in the Kemetic traditions, but other traditions have taken it on. But as far as I know for now, and I'll look it up and post it, and I may correct myself, but um, she discussed the wailing process, which is also a cultural process of the release of the energy of loss, And so when you hear people wail, that is also an African spiritual custom to release the energy of that loss because it's so painful. But she decided to introduce the pouring of the libations, and there, of course, was still tears and sorrow, but it's just a different kind of energy that's expressed when you do the pouring of libations. And one thing that she mentioned was, and I thought it too, of course, that we tease the winos and those who like to drink alcohol when we pour out a little liquor for the loss of the homies, right? A lot of the things that we do, we sometimes don't understand where they come from, and some of us are very diligent enough to document those things and make them available for us to be able to research and look up. But that's sometimes we do things and don't realize where they come from. So I just wanted to let you all know that was a great feeling for me to see her doing the pouring of libations and introducing it to people that may have never had it, because sometimes people go to funerals and they can't relate to that wailing and the crying and the tearing of the clothes. I mean, even in biblical references, you have where you have the tearing of the clothing as an expression of sorrow and the loss of a family. I believe it expressed that, if I remember the story right, in the story of Job, if I'm not mistaken. We lost all that family like he did. It was tested, but basically, uh, there's lots of rituals. Some African cultures wear black in loss. Some African cultures, or some older customs that are more of a biblical reference, which I still attribute to African culture, is a ripping of, not only ripping of color, but wearing sackcloth, which was a less comfortable clothing to wear, but if we worn either during humility or during a time of great sorrow or loss, because the sackcloth is a representation of humbleness. Let me see if I can look up here some some cultural practices, and expression of loss or expression of death, we'll say. And then we'll get into our manifestation. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let me see if these people like to put lists because they're talking too much. Let's see what this PDF says. Let's see if we can name off a few of them that we may or may not know. See if we can learn something new here today. I love learning things new. It enriches me. And then I'll take you all right quick to my. All right, well, here's some it's a cool little PDF that was created. Let me see the source. The source is an outline on different cultural beliefs by Loudon Malley Regional Palliative Care Consortium. So this is a medical society, and they're trying to respect and understand um, different pathways in which people express the loss. Okay, so they list Buddhists, that Buddhists believe in rebirth, that when they die, they're reborn again. The goal is to escape the cycle of death and rebirth and attain nirvana, okay? And I've read about that in my religious comparative studies. To prepare, a dying person may ask a monk or nun in their particular Buddhist tradition to help them make the transition from life to death as peaceful as possible. Buddhists believe that a person's state of mind as they die is very important so they can find a happy state of rebirth when they pass away. Before and at the moment of death, and for a period after death, the monk, nun, or spiritual friends may chant from the Buddhist scriptures. Okay, so once death is that's preparing. So once death happens, the Buddhists believe the spirit leaves the body immediately, but may linger in an in-between state near the body. In this case, it is important the body is treated with respect so the spirit can continue its journey to a happy state. At the funeral, there are many types, it says, of Buddhist funeral traditions, usually consisting of simple service held at a crematorium chapel. The coffin may be surrounded by objects of significance to the person who's died. Monks may come with the family to the funeral. At the burial, they can be either cremated or buried, depending upon the Buddhist tradition, and there may be several speeches and chants on the impermanence of life. And then after, the grave may be visited by families and friends and members of the person who passed away. The importance of the grave site will depend on the particular Buddhist tradition. Buddhists believe that it is the physical body that lies in the grave because the person's spirit has been reborn. Buddhists will often do things to wish for happiness of the deceased person. For example, in Southeast Asia, lay people give offerings to monks in memory of the dead person. So that's why you see some of those Buddhist temples have all that food and everything around because they believe that they're giving uh, homage to those who have died. So Catholic believes they believe that there's an afterlife. They'll see the face of God, uh, and if they're committed to a grave offense and they haven't repented at the time of death, the person will not enter into the glory of heaven. So they have specific rules. Okay, so let me read that again. I'm sorry. Um, it says Catholics believe that there's an afterlife and that once a person dies, they will see God face to face. If a person has committed a grave offense and has not repentant at the time of death, then that person would not enter into the full glory of heaven. Notice they say full glory of heaven, so they may believe in a variation thereof. Um, Preparing, so the sick and elderly can receive sacrament of the anointing of the sick on a regular basis if they wish to. If they can't go to church on their own, they will be taken there by members of the church. At the time when they die, the person close to death, the family or friends ask priests to come by and pray with the sick person at the sacrament and the anointing of the sick is administered. This includes anointing with holy oils and the reception of sacraments of reconciliation and Holy Communion. After the person has passed away, the priest comforts the family and helps them prepare for the funeral. At the funeral, the rite is called the Order of Christian Funerals. Family and friends pray for the soul of the deceased person and ask God to receive their soul into his eternal glory. The vigil and the deceased, the prayer service is held the night before the funeral. On the day of the funeral, a requiem, or requiem, some people might pronounce that, mass for the deceased person is celebrated. This includes scripture, prayers, and hymns. Family and friends are invited. The burial after the grave or place where the body has been entombed. The rite of committal is celebrated. Family members and friends, along with the priest, pray once again for the deceased person as they commit the body or cremated remains to the final resting place. So there's a lot of belief in Christianity, which is what I was raised up in, and if you're not buried, it's the problem. But there seems to be cremation that's offered here. After, over the next year, family members and friends often have mass celebration for the peace of the soul of the deceased person. On special occasions, such as the deceased birthday, Christmas, or anniversary of the death, family and friends will often visit the grave, flowers, or other objects to remember the deceased. Or sometimes, in my family, we used to visit the grave. Being raised Baptist Christian, we used to visit the grave sites on Memorial Day, which is a day for the veterans, but we use Memorial Day for Christian beliefs, which is set aside from Catholic beliefs, and this is all in general, because some people say, no, we don't do that. Okay, this is just in general beliefs. Christians trust they will go to heaven to be with God once they have died, and so in some respects, a funeral is a time of joy, although also sadness, as the person will be missed by friends and loved ones. Preparing a church minister may come and visit the person and their family to discuss any concerns and to help the person to prepare for death. Depending upon the form of Christianity, they give examples of Anglican or Presbyterian, and the particular church, there may be slightly different customs that will be followed. At the time, the church minister will offer any comfort or assistance the family needs to help them cope with the death. To organize the funeral, friends will often send their sympathies in the form of cards and flowers to the deceased family. Funeral, a Christian may be either, it's freezing here. Make sure everything else is not freezing. That's still going. Okay. Christians may be either buried or cremated depending upon their preference. The ceremony would typically be held at the deceased person's church and conducted by the minister, but it could also be held at a funeral home. The ceremony may involve hymns, readings, and prayer by both the minister and the deceased family and friends. The casket may be present in the room during the ceremony and carried out at the end by pallbearers, usually members of the deceased immediate family. There is often the opportunity for people to view the deceased and say their last goodbyes before the deceased is buried. Burial, if the deceased has been cremated, the ashes may be scattered. Otherwise, the ashes or body will be buried in the cemetery and marked with a gravestone to remember the deceased. So that's interesting. This is also showing that cremation or burial is acceptable in most Christian faiths, but sometimes you will hear some Christian faiths say, no, you have to be buried. On special occasions such as the deceased birthday, Christmas, or anniversaries of the death, family and friends may come visit. Often flowers, other objects to remember the deceased will be placed in the grave. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Mormon. I've also practiced in this faith as well. Believes Church of Latter-day Saints or Mormons are also known as believe that that at death the body and spirit separate. The spirit goes to the spirit world before being reunited with the body. The judgment will occur, and after that, the person will live in heaven with God. Preparing the ward, bishop, and members of the church will offer support to the person who's dying and their family. The ward bishop will go to the deceased home and offer assistance to the family, making arrangements for the funeral. Funeral services are generally conducted by the bishop in a ward chapel or in a mortuary. Although people mourn the loss of loved ones, the funeral service is viewed as a celebration of the life of the deceased. The service will consist of a eulogy, doctrinal messages, music, and prayer. The funeral is designed to bring peace and solace as church members believe families may be reunited in the life hereafter. So, yeah, that's true. They believe that families who are married and joined together will also be families in the next life. You don't just kind of live these separate lives, you stay together. Mourners often send flowers to the family to show their support. Church members who have received temple ordinances are buried in their temple clothing. The grave is dedicated as a place of peace and remembrance for the family. Cremation is generally discouraged. So here's a faith that discourages cremation, and I want you to do that. The gravesite is considered to be a sacred place for the family to visit and place for remembrances. You got Greek Orthodox, and we may or may not get through all these, but I do want to definitely get to Muslim to change because we've got um, mostly Christian faith here. Let me see if it's anything that's really different. The Greek Orthodox strongly emphasize a positive outcome in death, that the disease is alive with God. Death is a separation of the soul from the body, physical dimension, spiritual dimension, but the body will be reunited with the soul at last judgment. To prepare, um, It's practiced the same today as it was practiced hundreds of years ago, which is interesting. Highly ritualistic and symbolic. The coffin is taken home on the way to the funeral service so the deceased can visit their home for the last time. Wailing, remember I was telling you about wailing? Wailing usually takes place at the home. If an Orthodox priest is unavailable to administer the last anointing, it is sometimes acceptable for a Catholic priest to do so. So this is more in the Catholic faith. The patient's family would need to be consulted about this. At the time of death, the priest says the first prayer and a candle is lit. This is repeated for 40 days because it's believed the soul roams on earth for 40 days, as did Christ. The lighting of the candle is symbolic in asking God for forgiveness on behalf of the deceased. The funeral, every person lights a candle at the church in memory of the deceased. The coffin is usually open and an icon placed on the body or coffin. At the end of service, everyone pays respect to the deceased and the icon by passing the coffin. At the cemetery, the last funeral prayer is said, and the body is buried facing east because when Christ was born, the guiding star was in the east. The family has supplied a small bottle of wine mixed with oil and some wheat or bread, and the priest at the church, when the last prayer is finished, the priest pours the wine and oil mixture over the lowered coffin, making the sign of the cross 3 times. Isn't it funny how movies just kind of hodgepodge all this stuff together? So a lot of the beliefs we have come from movies that we've watched or some visualization that has kind of cross-referenced these things and put them all together, and you think that's one thing, but it's another. Anyway, symbolizing the Holy Trinity and sustenance for the departing soul. The priest sprinkles earth on the grave, followed by the family. And you see this, but you don't see this in every tradition, but you see it thinking that that is the tradition of Christianity or Catholicism, and this is the Greek Orthodox tradition. In the Orthodox religion, cremation is not permitted because it is believed that we are made from earth and that we shall return to the earth. So you hear some Christians and mixed faiths say this, and they don't even know where it comes from. It comes from the Greek Orthodox. That's why I say it's so important that we study and learn, because sometimes we think that we're the origin of things in our studies, and you come to find out that that custom is way older than even you understood. Um, After, masses are conducted as memorial at 3 days, 9 days, 40 days, 6 months, 12 months, and 3 years. After each mass, food is eaten in honor of the deceased soul. That is very ritualistic. So they're sticking to those traditions. Hindu. So Hindu is not the same as Buddhism. A lot of people get them mixed up, but they are different. Hinduism embraces a pantheon of gods and goddesses, with individual Hindus worshiping one or more of these. Hindus believe in reincarnation. When a person dies, their soul merely moves from one body to the next on its path to reach nirvana, heaven. So these are obviously a variation of each other, but they're not the same. So while it is a sad time when someone dies, it also is a time of celebration. To prepare, the family priest may come with a dying person, sing holy songs, and read holy texts. The priest may perform last rites. Other rituals can include the tying of a thread around the neck and wrist of the dying patient, the sprinkling of Ganges water, or the placing of a leaf from the sacred basil bush on the tongue. At the time, family will pray around the body soon after death. People try to avoid touching the body as it's considered unclean. Sacred threads and other religious objects should not be removed. So if they see a Christian jumping in a casket, crying, "Oh Lord," and wailing, they be like, "Oh my goodness, look at them go." So, you gotta, it's so interesting how we look at these things, and all of these things come from customs and how they're hodgepodge together, right? Burials. Hindus are cremated as they believe burning the body releases the spirit. The flames represent Brahma, the creator. A priest, and after the priest will purify the family's home. Let me make sure I didn't skip. Let's talk about the funeral. Yeah. I'm sorry, I did skip something in the funeral. I apologize. The body is decorated with sandalwood and flowers. Someone will read from scriptures. The head mourner is usually a male or the eldest son, and he will pray for the body's soul. Okay. So cremating releases that energy. Remember I was talking about energies? And it's so funny that nobody wants to admit that many, many, many of these customs, if you trace them back, come from some kind of African spiritual concept. People hate it when you say that. I am a testimony to it. When I say it on my Twitter feed, people fall apart. If you ever read my Twitter, you want some good entertainment, read my Twitter feed. A priest will purify this is after, a priest will purify the family's home with spices and incense. A mourning period begins during which friends and relatives can visit the family and offer their sympathies. Their priests are busy. After the funeral, mourners must wash and change their clothing before entering the house. 1 year later, Shadra occurs. This is either a one-off event or may become an annual event. Shraddha is when food is given to the poor. I could be pronouncing that wrong. Shraddha, Shradh, given to the poor memory of the deceased. Shraddha lasts 1 month, and a priest will say prayers for the deceased during this time. The family will not buy any new clothes or go to any parties. Okay. You have our Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm gonna let you all read that yourself. Not that I want to disrespect the Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's just gonna take some time to read through all those. You have the Jewish beliefs, which I do want to mention. Let me see. You said that they're Orthodox, Reform, or Conservative, so it could vary. Um, Let me go down to Muslim because I've read many. Let me read the Jewish one because that's not Christian. And I'm going to go down to Muslim just out of fairness. So Jewish beliefs may vary depending on whether the Jewish person is Orthodox, Reform, or Conservative. Jews believe that when they die, they will go to heaven to be with God. The next world is called Olam Ha'emet, or the word of truth. Death is seen as part of life and a part of God's plan. Family and friends will gather. A rabbi may be called to offer comfort and to pray for a person who is dying. It is a basic tenet of Judaism that a dying person should not be left alone. The reading of the Psalm 23 and the reciting of the Shema prayer may be desired. The person's eyes are closed, the body is covered and laid on the floor, and candles are lit. The Jewish law being around a dead body causes uncleanliness, so often the washing of the body and the preparations of burial will be carried out by a special group of volunteers from the Jewish community. This is considered a holy act. The funeral, Jews may not be cremated or embalmed. In Israel, a coffin might not always be used, but outside of Israel, a coffin is almost always used. The body is wrapped in a white shroud. Mourners have the opportunity to express anguish. Tears are seen as a sign of sadness and show the mourner is confronting death. Mourners also tear their clothing. Ah, see, I be reading y'all. Y'all think I'm crazy, but I'm not. As an expression of grief. Burial. The burial takes place as soon as possible following death. Pallbearers will carry the casket to the grave. A family member will throw a handful of earth in the casket with the body. This is to put the body in close contact with the earth. Jewish law says each grave must have a tombstone to remember the deceased. After a candle is lit after returning from the cemetery to mark 7 days of mourning called Shiva. This is when people can offer sympathies to the mourners. A meal is prepared by friends to help the mourners regain their strength. Each year, the anniversary of the death is commemorated according to the Hebrew calendar. The day is observed as Solemn Day of Remembrance. Why am I trusting this source? It's coming from a medical community, so it's in their best interest to get this information right because they it's part of HIPAA protections and laws that we must honor as healthcare providers must honor the beliefs and systems of others, and so it's important to know it and to study it. Okay, so I trust this information. Um, you have a belief called Maori. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. And here we are with Muslim Islamic. Okay, so there are two types of Muslims: Shiite and Sunni. So beliefs, and I wonder, do most Muslims? And it stops here, which I would have to say that now this information might be questionable. But if it's under the Islamic faith of Muslim, I don't even know if this is including the Nation of Islam. And I'll have to read down and see if it does that. But I don't know if the Nation of Islam identifies with Shia or Sunni at all, or whether they're required to choose a group. That's an interesting question that comes to mind. So beliefs and customs may be slightly different for each Muslim belief that the soul continues to exist after death. During life, a person can shape their soul for better or for worse, depending on how they live their life. Muslims believe there will be a day of judgment by Allah. Until then, the deceased remain in their graves. But on Judgment Day, they will either go to heaven or hell. Muslims accept death as God's will. Preparing Muslims should be prepared for death at any time, which is partly why daily prayers are so important. A dying person may wish to die facing Mecca, the Muslim holy city. Family members and elders recite the Muslim scripture called the Quran and pray for the person. If there is no family, any Muslim can do this. Grief counseling is often not well accepted and may be considered an intrusion of privacy. At the time, the eyes of the deceased will be closed and the body is laid out with their arms across their chest and head facing Mecca. The body will be washed by family or friends. It will be wrapped in a white shroud and prayers will be said. Contact between the body and non-Muslims is discouraged. If a non-Muslim needs to touch the body, gloves should be worn. Male staff should handle male patients, female with female patients. The funeral, the body will be buried within 24 hours as Muslims believe the soul leaves the body at the moment of death. The funeral will take place either at the gravesite and involve prayer and readings from the Quran. So they have a very quick process. Excuse me. No women are allowed to go into the graveyard. Before burial, a prayer will be recited. Mourners are forbidden from excessive demonstration of grief. The body will not be cremated as this is not permitted in Islam. The deceased will be buried with their face turned to the right, facing Mecca. A coffin is usually not used, but a chamber dug into the grave and sealed with wooden boards so no earth touches the body. The grave will usually be simple without any fancy decoration. After 3 days of mourning follows, where visitors are received and a special meal to prepare the departed may be held. Mourners avoid decorative jewelry and clothing. I always have a problem with that word. Male family members go to visit the grave daily or weekly for 40 days. There will also be prayer gatherings at home for 40 days. After 1 year, there will be a large prayer gathering of family and friends. After that meal, family and friends visit the grave and everyone remembers the deceased. So you have Scientologists' belief on this list. This is going to be on the list that I remember to send to you all, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and email this to myself so I can have it and remember it, not be looking for it later. But it has lots of beliefs on here, but I just want to get at least to the main ones that we're used to. You've got 7-day Adventist, you have the Sikhs, and those are what's on this list. And I'm sure you can find many, many other because we go by certain religious texts and we don't always include everyone. So I don't want to um, disrespect anyone's religion. But for the sake of time, those are the ones I just decided to read because those are the ones that are the most familiar and customs in which I've read before. But this confirms some of my memory. So I am emailing this to myself. I hope that was um, helpful in your learning. Something that maybe you learned that you didn't know. Like, oh, is that where that come from? And that's why it's so important for us to study and read and learn. Sometimes when you have a question on your mind, Google is such a great search engine that you can use it, as a tool when you have questions. And many of us do already, of course, right? Because of the technological age that we live in. But I want to kind of finish that up and we'll get back to this thing I call manifestation and how I've used it in my life. So while you're waiting on me, look at the nature around me. Remember I told you all this tree behind me? Um, death practices. Remember I told you all that behind me I was waiting for this tree. If you go back to that episode in which this tree was not yet bloomed, and the one to my left, maybe it'd be your right, is in full bloom. Maybe I'll turn it so you all can see it. Hold on, make sure. So this is a tree behind me. It hasn't even gotten its flowers yet, but you see how beautiful and green it is? They were bare and barren, and that is the other tree that's in full bloom, and they are so pretty because they have flowers. I can't wait till the flowers come out so you all can see it, and I'll be out here with them. But see if you can go up and see. This is a huge tree. See that? It's a really big tree. I love this yard. It's just great. So I hope that picture's a lot clearer because when I'm watching on YouTube, it don't look clear at all. But when I watch it on my other screen, it is quite clear. Maybe because it's live. And I hope you all are seeing a much better image than what I'm noticing on this feed. But anyway, so that was interesting. And that was just to speak to the libations and the offering of something different. So thankful to see Dr. Charnier. She got to take pictures with my son. She slightly remembers them because she usually sees them up to the first year and then it's passed on to another doctor. But, and by her seeing so many patients, I can't really blame her for that. But then, as we were talking, she definitely I think, began to remember me a little bit more, but she definitely was a warm, great character. She offers so much great information to the people who were there. They were so thankful. It was such a great meeting. We learned so much, and I'm trying to help my son build a network of people so that if anything happens to me, he has somewhere to go to as far as that is concerned for himself. Of course, he's going to have other family, that love him dearly, that want to help. But sometimes there's nothing like people who understand your struggle. And these people have built a network that is catered to children with sickle cell. And then the great thing about the camp that he goes to, it takes them off to be able to camp with other children with disabilities. And these children with disabilities, unlike sickle cell, are more outward. And so it teaches them that, you know, um, you can kind of mask your sickness and people don't know, except with the yellowing of the eyes. Sometimes they get yellow eyes, but if they're in their more normal state, people don't know that they're suffering, which is a challenge in itself too. They talked about all that. I'll put the video up for you all to watch. But anyway, we spent about 45 minutes getting here. Okay, so I want to get into this manifestation because I think manifestation is very important. My allergies are, so forgive me. Um, and before I get into this, let me go grab some water, y'all. So I'll be right back. I should have brought my water with me. I apologize, but I'm going to grab some water real quick. Excuse me, Angel. Oh, you know what? I didn't put I put my cushion down. That's not good. I'm gonna be wearing that out. Okay, so I got my water, and now I can sit here and talk to y'all. Sorry. Thank you for waiting. You do a lot of talking, your mouth will get dry. So, got that going. And I hope y'all can still hear the music in the background because sometimes when I plug these headphones up, you can't hear the music. It's kind of in the background, but I'll turn it up a little bit more so hopefully y'all can hear it. All right, I still got to figure out this music thing. I think I'm gonna have to probably start bringing my tailgater speaker and playing it in the background because I can Bluetooth that so you can hear what it is that I'm pulling up. And if I pull up videos, I might have to simultaneously put it up on my phone. So I'll figure this out. Once I get out of school, I will be a much better host, I promise. Because I'll have a little bit more time to organize these things the way that I want. So that's why I asked you all to bear with me. My show is not a perfect show. It's meant to give information. It's not meant to be perfect. Um, and I just like being with you all and providing information. I realize that's just who I am. I love providing information. I love talking to people. I love being informed. And I love informing. So let's get into this manifestation because that was the first part of what we're supposed to talk about, right? Manifestation. Um, and sometimes this could be a difficult concept for people. So the first part is manifestation, the other part is balance. And I think those are very two spiritual um, principles that are important to be able to learn. Because they are the drivers in a lot of ways um, in life's challenges and life's exploration in our walk in life. Okay, so manifestation. Let's just define it first, right? Because we like to know definitions. And I need to get my etymology book. I thought I ordered one, or it might just be online. I'm looking at my Kindle to see if I got it, but the etymology of the English language. So, manifestation is described as an event, action, or object that clearly shows or embodies something, especially a theory or an abstract idea. So, the action of fact or shown an abstract idea, a symptom or sign of an ailment. That's also what manifestation can be, manifestation of a disease. But we're going to be talking about manifestation in reference to spirituality. So, let's see if we can kind of dig in that a little bit more as far as definition is concerned. I know what it means in my mind, but I want to give you all some information. So another source defines spiritual manifestation as a theory that through regular meditation and positive constructive thought, you can make your dreams and desires become reality. So I'm not a regular meditator. I have not graduated there yet, but I do believe in the positive constructive thought. I feel like I have mastered this particular aspect and I have used it frequently in my own life and it has worked. Okay. It's not anything spooky or magical. It is really simply energy. It is expressed in energy and it is expressed in um, a direction of energy and being aware that you are controlling this energy. So let me give you an example of that. Um, Maybe the common one to use is a job, right, that you want. And you really want this job. It's something that you've had a desire for, but maybe you've been having a hard time um, tapping into that element, okay? Tapping into the workforce in that. So, how would you go about finally attracting that energy towards you? So, what I personally do is the first thing I do, right, is I try to control the physical realm around me. Okay. That's what you somewhat have control over. So, how do you control the physical realm around you? I prepare myself, right? So, manifestation is not all in the mind, it's all about what you do in real time, too. Because you thought I was about to tell you something spooky, like, oh, yeah, and if I stare at it real long, no, there's a whole preparation process for this, okay? You have to change the way that you think, in my opinion, in order for you to begin to realize some of these things. It's so dry today. I don't know why. I've been drinking. I think because Texas is starting to get hotter, so I'm gonna be doing. I drink a lot when it's warm. I drink a lot. So um, the first part is what you have control over. In other words, right? What do I have control over? Okay. So if this is a position that I want, the first thing I have to figure out is what does this position require, right? So I do a knowledge search. I begin to search for um, everything about this position. I begin to um, do some research, right? Do some research on a position, find out the lingo, learn the lingo, write the lingo down, define the terms, understand what the lingo is, okay? I learn what the dress code is. What's the dress code for this place? What's considered acceptable? What's the culture? Okay? I do history on that company, okay? And so now I've controlled all the physical aspects. I got my dress code down. I know about the company. I know the company lingo. In my resume, I incorporate and infuse that company lingo. So you may have to modify your resume. Some people just do a resume and they'll just leave it. But I will modify my resume according to the position. I know it sounds like, oh, this sounds like a business show. No. This is going to come back to. I'll bring it back full circle. Bear with me. Okay. Um, so you basically look at all the physical attributes of that company and you begin to live the culture of that company outside of the company, right? You're not in yet, but you're outside, but you are trying to assimilate that particular role. You are trying to show that you can be the individual for that role, right? So you have transformed yourself into the culture of that company. That's the physical aspect of it, okay? So you've done your research, you looked at the way that your appearance should be in order to fit into that culture, where visually whomever at that company needs to interview you will feel at balance with you. They'll feel a familiarity with you, and then you do research. You can't just go into it blindly. You need to understand that company, understand who its leadership currently is, understand the direction of the company, the goals of the company, how is that company performing, be able to talk intelligently about that company. And then the other thing that physically need to do is be able to dress the dress, right? How do people at this company dress? So it's a uniform company. Then your professional dress. What are some of the professional colors that have been put out here by HR societies? Because this is a study. People have studied these things as far as who most successfully gets the interview. I can tell you from my experience that when I'm interested in a company, I can only think of 2 times in which I interviewed and didn't get it in my life. And one time was because they felt I was overqualified, which sucked. And the second time, I just didn't hear back from the company at all, so I didn't get any feedback at all as to why I didn't get chosen. So those were the 2 times in which I ever got denied. But if I landed an interview with a company, they wanted me, okay? Because I understand these principles and concepts. I know how to walk the walk and talk the talk to get where I need to go, okay? That's assimilation. And so I'm not such a rogue or or a vigilante that I'm going to basically get myself out of opportunities. I do know how to talk to people and I know how to relate. I attribute it to relating and not to that. So now we're going to get into the non-physical, which is even more difficult to maybe wrap our minds around. Some of you might get it right away when you watch this. Some of you might be like, I don't really understand what you're talking about. So I'm going to try to put some feedback. I'm going to be really slow to put feedback information on here in this next week or so because it's finals week. I'm not going to lie to you. It's crunch time. But once I go back, when the summer months come, I will go back and make sure I put all the information. As I've done in my other videos, I have been consistent with that. Okay, so the non-tangible. So we talked about the tangible. So now we're in the intangible, right? That part that you can't put your finger on, but it's there. You know it's there, and you're not crazy. You're not crazy. Okay, so this is going to be the more difficult to describe. So when I see a position that I want, um, I begin to conversate with myself. I begin to talk about all of the things, sometimes internally and externally. Sometimes I'll talk out loud. And I begin to talk about um, what I'm going to say. Sometimes I begin to act out how I would behave in certain scenarios or situations. I rarely write anything down personally. I don't write down what I'm going to say. Some people find this helpful. I've heard and read that before, that writing down a game plan as far as what you will say when interviewed. Um, but when I'm talking about what I would say, I'm talking about an affirmation of energy that I can get this position, that I'm capable to have this position, that it is in me to perform and be a part of that position. So everything that I learned about the company, I am affirming to myself that I am part of that culture, that I am the person to be selected. Let's go a little deeper in that. So I don't know if you all got a chance to watch an episode that I put up that talked about that Dougie Fresh was talking about that voice, like when you close your mouth and you say a word, any word, it doesn't matter. Let's say fire in our head, right? 1, 2, 3. Did you hear it? I heard fire, but I didn't hear it with these ears. I heard it internally. It said fire, right? So that's the voice that I'm talking to. I'm not talking to looking in the mirror. Some people do that exercise. That's an option if you like to talk to yourself in the mirror, see yourself talk. That's more of an outwardly thing to me, just so you can see how you look, see how you smile, see how some of your facial expressions are. I don't really practice that as much, but I practice talking to that voice. And I talk to that voice in more than one circumstance. It's not just the voice just from when I want to get something. This is a voice that I have a very close relationship with and have been what some may call your imaginary friend. Um, I was one of those kids that played with their imaginary friend on a regular basis. And it wasn't until I, maybe start noticing or got scolded by a family member for talking to my imaginary friend that I stopped doing it outwardly as much. But I still do it. And, another surprising thing that I've learned is that my kids do it. I don't stop them. I don't stop them. I do not stop them. I do not shame them from it. Um, you know, uh, I've kind of passively let them know if you do that in public, people may try to commit you. But within our home, I do not stop. If they're talking to themselves, I don't stop them. I do not stop them. It is so important to develop a relationship with this other part of you that you have always known to be there, but you do not outwardly um, express it or address it, or at some point, maybe some earlier than others, are not comfortable with allowing anyone else to know that it exists. Okay, but it exists. And some may watch this video and say, okay, she's gone off the cuckoo rail. That's okay. This may not be for everyone. That's another part of the affirmation in me and how I know that I've arrived at a different plane in my mind and in my spiritual self, is that I don't care what people think about my thoughts. They are mine, and I express them because I realize that there are other people who have been thinking what I'm thinking, but they haven't felt comfortable enough to express it. And so they don't acknowledge it in public, because public has created a standard that when you behave in X, Y, and Z fashion, that you are outside of cultural and social norms. Okay, and so that's the reason for that. But I've just been a spirit and being that has very little for most of my life not cared about what people think. Okay, so when you're talking to this unknown, we'll call it, this inner self, we'll call it, I like inner self better because it's not unknown to me, I know exactly what it is, but for some of you it may be unknown and maybe you thought you might need some medications. And sometimes I even challenge the psychiatric community. I know there are people that talk to themselves, and I know that they got some real serious issues, but sometimes I wonder if we allow people to channel those additional multiple personality disorders that have manifested themselves. I wonder if we looked at it from a more spiritual objective and not necessarily a condemnation aspect. If we can discover something else about them, if we can discover something else about um, what human beings have created, because we're creators, whether we realize it or not. We create all the time. We create reality. We create um, physical things, tangible things, and we also create the intangible. Okay, um, and the reason why I believe this is because the universe is constantly creating. Right? We've learned from astronomy models that the universe is building from inside out. Right? So. The black hole theory, on one side of the black hole, you've got energy shooting out, energy sucking in, right? So you've got this, we'll call it this hole, right? And so a black hole is a star imploding. So this star was here and it imploded. And when it imploded, it's like, and when it sucks in, it has a gravitational pull. And when it pulls in, it's pulling everything from this side to this side. And right here is considered the space-time continuum. Is that the right word? Am I thinking right? I might be messing that word up, but and so this is the space in which time ends and begins, right here at this precipice. And so on this side of a time begins, on this side of a time ends, because remember that star died. So on this side, time is beginning from zero and on, and it goes outward that way. So from that one implosion of a star, something is being destroyed. So one galaxy is being destroyed, and another galaxy is being created. And that's why they say when you look out into space, you're looking back in time. You're not looking forward in time. You're looking back in time. We would have to be able to look beyond our Earth to look forward in time, which I guess is nothingness, right? If you really think about it, it's nothing. Okay. All right. So it's a lot. That's why I'm saying these spiritual shows can be hard. You may think that people who do these things are just got it all together, but in here they like, is that right? Is that what did I say right? Oh my God, what did I say? And I'm okay to question myself on air because I want to get away from this perfection model that we think that we have to have, that we think our spiritual leaders have to have. You have to be perfect. You have to know everything. You've got to have all those answers right there. You got to quote that scripture right. And that's a share. Hopefully, have time to share with you all that that uh, dialogue that I had with the individuals. Now you can just go to my Twitter page and look down my feed, and you'll be able to see it. And people are very satisfied with themselves when they think that their particular dogma or their particular way of thinking is right, and there's no alternative. There is absolutely no alternative. I don't believe that about myself. I don't believe that about any spiritual text, and I don't believe that about anyone else. I don't believe that one person has all the answers. I don't believe in this one size fits all. I just don't believe it. And the reason why I don't believe it is because all you got to do is take a look at the world today. It's in chaos, and it stays in perpetual chaos, and there's theories for that. Okay, so back to manifestation for that job. So with the with the ability to try to attract that job to you, which you have that laws of attraction. I'm not saying it's bad, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about creating, manifesting, which some people believe the laws of attraction do that. That's fine, but I think that kind of goes a little bit different direction. I'm not saying I'm not different. All I'm saying is that I want to stick with the manifestation. I want you to be able to realize and manifest things and watch them manifest around you. I've watched things manifest around me based upon energy that I've put out there. I've watched it happen. I've watched thoughts about an individual that I've been thinking of, and that individual comes up. I've had thoughts about wanting to make a particular financial thing happen, and all I needed was this component, and I concentrated on that ideal, and it happened. Okay. I didn't necessarily know where it was coming from because I don't have that kind of power at this time. Maybe I will one day, maybe I never will, but I don't have the power to necessarily force things, you know, like psychokinesis may say, or like what's the other one? I can move objects, or the one that Dr. Xavier had at X-Men, telekinesis. So no, I don't have that power, but a part of me wonders if it can be developed. Okay, and a part of me believes that it is already developed, but some of that information is privileged to us and some of it is not. Or people who may have that power don't really want to talk about it because they understand the world we live in. And those who overly talk about it, unfortunately, end up being considered the crackpots, or they try to open up a network, and that network becomes corrupted, and all the message just becomes convoluted. And so, um, I don't know, this world's just dynamically like that. But when you're manifesting things, what I'm trying to say to you is that manifestation is not just only in the mind; it is actions as well, and it's multifaceted. It's not just, oh, if I just think it real hard, and stare at it, it's going to come. No, you have to make some of these things happen, because remember, you're a creator. You create things all the time. One of the ultimate things is life, if we have it in us. Some of us genetically don't have it in us, but the majority of us do. And so, one dynamic of your creation that's involuntary is life. You know that you have sperm and egg cells, and you know that if you physically create an action, which is sexual intercourse, there's a likelihood that you will create life. Okay, that's one creation that you're capable of, that you know of. That's a manifestation. What is so different about that? That's on the most simplest terms I can give you. Other manifestations that are our ideas, right? When an artist creates a picture on a piece of paper, they first thought that. They thought about that picture and how they wanted it to look first. And then once they were done with that, they um, put it in a tangible medium. And that tangible medium is pen and paper, paintbrush and paper. It's on a piece of paper. That abstract idea was now able to be visualized by those who have eyes. But the first eyes that saw it was that person's mind eye. Their mind eye understood that they wanted to create something, and they physically created it. So how is that so different from other things that we wish to manifest? Okay, so when we go back to that definition of manifestation, right, let's read it again so we can remind ourselves: an event, action, or object that clearly shows or embodies something, especially a theory or an abstract idea. So this is even saying within this statement that it can begin abstractly, but more than likely it will become an event, it become an action, it become an object that clearly shows. All right, so here's another challenge. This one says clearly shows because we live in the material world. And so it's having a problem with identifying with not being able to show. But if it's in your mind, is that proof enough? Who gets to decide that what's in your mind is unreal? Who decides that? Society, cultural norms, social norms. What if that's no longer a norm? What if now what's in your mind is considered just as potent? What if I say to you, I can prove to you that's true too? So we say things like, in the justice system, we say things like premeditated murder. I just proved to you that we use things in the mind as tangible proof that something was going to happen. So if a prosecutor can prove that the murder you created was premeditated, then you can serve more time. How can I prove that it was premeditated? Well, um, we go back and we look at your Facebook page and you put some thoughts down on a piece of paper. That could be more tangible. Let's go intangible. Intangible. Um, you showed up at her house. You showed up at her house and you kept following her, right? Well, you were following her. I don't know what your thoughts were, but the simple action of you following her, we knew that you probably wanted to kill her. But they were trying to guess what's in your mind through your actions. They guess what was in your mind through your actions. The intangible is harder to prove. It's harder to prove. That's why the theory of the creator, of God, and other beings are hard to prove, because they are something that the human conscious has drawn up. My feet itch because they bite me. They get me. They're like, yeah. I didn't bring the off. Brought to you by off out here today. Um, so that's why it's so much harder to prove um, manifestation, and that's why it's considered, kooky things or spooky, because people are not able to say, "See here, here's the proof." And that's another thing that we fight over spirituality, because of those simple things. Well, prove it to me. Prove that these people live. To me that myth is reality. Some people like to say myth is more stronger than reality because it lives on. Reality happens at a moment in time. History happens at a moment in time. So that is an example of manifestation that I would like to leave with you, and I want to move into balance. Okay. So manifestation is creation. It is energy. It is moving that energy force into becoming reality. It is learning how to hone it and control it. Um, if you play with it enough, you'll begin to get signals, feelings. You'll get cues within your being. That's even harder to prove. I don't have any tangible proof of that for you, but sometimes I'll just know a direction to go into, because I've been practicing this for so long. I'll just know whether I should do something or not. My ability to manifest has kept me safe over the years. It has let me know when to move forward and when not to move forward. It has allowed me to um, make decisions that are very important to me. And so far, it's worked for me. You know, if something bad happens, does that mean that my manifestation failed? No, because when manifestation is being realized, it could go in one direction or another, because energy is not necessarily, it can be positive or negative, meaning it can move forward, it can become more excited or less excited. And you can learn these if you choose to study things like physics and chemistry. These ideals have been studied very vigorously and written down. People have manifested books to this, ideals to this, and allowed us to study their mind eye in these systems of information that have been created for us. And so this is something that I've been doing since I've been a little girl. Talking to that inner self, that other individual that lives within me, that talks to me, that doesn't speak out loud but speaks internally, that does not use the same voice. I don't even think the voice sounds the same. If I really, really think about it, and I think about my inside voice doesn't sound like my external voice, because I have vocal cords. Your vocal cords are unique, and that's why all of our voices are not the same. If you ever study that discipline, I'm not really sure what that discipline is called. Let me see if I can look that up. Study of voice patterns. Because this is something that's on a forensic level as well, how they're able to listen to a recording and realize that it's one person or another. Oh, that's interesting. Autism can be revealed by your voice patterns. That's something new. Voice analysis. I guess it's they're doing some studies. I guess they're just calling it voice analysis. So if you want to look that up, I'll put something in here about voice analysis as well later on when I review the video on what I'm going to put you down information for. Voice analysis is something that's very interesting because your voice holds patterns. As we start getting deeper into our spiritual talks, we'll talk about tonology and things like that. This thing's fighting the hell out of me. And how tone plays a very significant role in our spiritual development. That our ancestors used to use tones, chants, types of meditations to manifest different things. And a lot of this art has been lost because we just don't practice it anymore. We don't know anything about that here in Americas. We're learning it as we've had religious freedoms to do so, but it's just not the common thing to do. We do believe in prayer, which that's an expression of tonation, of tonal reverence. But we don't believe in using tone, except for those religions that believe in the speaking of the tongues. But they're using it for, I think, a different cause than the manifestation aspect of it that I'm talking about. So there's different aspects of it that are here, but it's just not a commonplace. And uh, it's just important to know. That these things exist, I guess, is what I want to unearth. I want us to realize that there's more to our spiritual lives than just Judaism, Christianity, or um, Islam, and that there's so much more out here as far as cultural beliefs that we can explore and begin to look at and use. If you're the kind of person like me, I think that it all should be investigated and looked at, and that we can begin to use these different things in our life as we see fit. Some people don't agree with that. They think that that is a manifestation of wickedness or evil, or that you're going to unearth something that you don't have any business and you'll pay for it. And that there's a psychology that is associated with that particular frame of mind and thinking. Okay, and that is cultural. That is based upon how you were raised, what you were raised in, and information that's been delivered to you. But if I'm going to treat this thing as information and information only, um, I'm open minded. I'm open minded to look at these things. So let's get into the balance aspect of it, okay? Because I think I have touched on manifestation and how I want to um, frame that and how I want you all to practice that. It's another thing, practice it. Practice talking to that inside voice. See if it mirrors what you're saying, or if it speaks along with you, or speaks at a different cadence than you, or if it speaks at a different time from you. Does it only talk when you talk, or does it respond to you? Does it answer you? Does it tell you things? Does it begin to act in its own accord? Or does your inside voice always sync with your outside voice? Is it plausible that there are some of us that are born with different attributes than others? Absolutely. Not everybody is born in the same fashion, under the same signs, under the same time frames, and so different births bring on different attributes. Okay, and that's just a whole nother topic of study, but just to kind of briefly touch on that. And so it's possible that some of us are born with different abilities than the other. I don't think that it makes us any more special. In fact, it's actually going to make us more strange for those of us that are born under these conditions. It's going to make us more strange and more hard to understand. And you may feel more alienated and ostracized for those differences, because it's possible that, and I've been thinking on this long and hard, and what my inner voice tells me is that it's very plausible that there's a vast majority that are born um, under, for lack of better words, a more normal pattern, and some of us are born under those abnormal patterns. And those that are born under those abnormal patterns wake up in this life just different, just different from other people. We don't move like other people. When I look at people who are in leadership position, that's already a very palpable discernment that we could put our finger on. We call them type A, type B personalities, right? Type C, and I think type D. And so you have these different personality types that have been expressed in the psychology um, realm of our disciplines, and it talks about these different personality types and what they typically exhibit, behaviors, patterns, and what they typically do. So we say the type A personality is usually the leader, right? And that's just for understanding. If we can wrap our minds around the concept that we're speaking a language and we're speaking in a particular way because that is based upon understanding, it's based upon what we have learned, others' willingness to write it down or talk about or express it, and whether we absorb that information as being true or absorb it as being false. Could be the 50-50, right? But that's not the only variable. Maybe I partially agree with you, blah, 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 right? So the human experience is very dynamic, right? It's not just one way or the other. So manifestation, moving on to balance. Balance is going to be another hard one to describe because balance is subjugated to who you're talking about, and it's subjugated to events, time, um, circumstance. It's just so many variables when you talk about uh, balance, right? So how I describe balance, let's just go ahead in our dictionary, right, and define balance, right? So balance is defined as an event distribution of weight enabling someone or something to remain upright and steady. A condition in which different elements equal, are equal or in the correct proportions. That's as a noun. As a verb, it's described as keep or put something in a steady position so that it does not fall. And the second verb definition, offset or compare the value of one thing with another. So if I had to choose the ones that I'd like to kind of place into perspective, what I'm talking about, I like the second verb, right? Because the first one is more like an object, and I'm talking about more of the mind. So offset or compare the value of one thing with another. And then the noun uh, definition I like is the condition in which different elements are equal or in the correct proportions. There's, again, a distribution of weight is kind of more like for physical items, and I kind of want to stay in intangible. And to even stay on track, I'm going to be back and forth looking at these definitions, going back and forth. Like, let me look at that. Okay. All right. So balance is a very peculiar concept. Balance, again, is so variable and varies from whom you are talking about and what you are talking about. Okay. So there can be a reference point, right? Allergy, excuse me. Sorry. I just want to take a drink while I'm at it. Balance can be at a different reference point, right? So let's use our diets because I believe diet and spirituality are very closely linked. When you're trying to balance your diet, what are we trying to balance? We're trying to balance the amount of weight consumption that we have because the majority of us don't want to be overweight. Okay, it's a stigmatism to it. It causes ailments. We don't necessarily feel at our best when we have the most weight on us, so when we're at our heaviest, and we all strive to fit an ideal in our mind in which we were our healthiest or our most visually acceptable, right? So when you look in the mirror and you say, yeah, I look good. Unfortunately, some of us have challenges in which when we look in the mirror, it's not ever what we want it to be because we've always had weight issues, right? So even weight can be subjective, very, very subjective, because it depends upon who you're talking about. So it goes back into that Depends upon who you're talking about, in which we're talking about balance, okay? And then, if I compare my dog to me, as being two different species, her balance is different than my balance. We're both females, right? But her balance is totally different than my balance. Like right now, she's laying in the grass to get cool. I might put a fan on me to get cool, but that's my available resources. Her available resources are different. So let's just get down to how I balance then, right? Since we understand that balancing can vary on the what and the who, okay, as starters. You're going to actually have the when and the how and the why. That's also other um, considerations. So I'll just try to help with how I balance. The way that I stay in balance spiritually um, in my own life, and I said I was going to talk more so about weight, but I think I'm going to come away from that because it's not going to give me, or diet, because it's not going to give me. Diet is related to food, and maybe I'll come back to that. But just the way that I keep balance in my life spiritually um, is I try not to put too much on myself that I can't handle, right? And if you have a helpful spirit about you, sometimes that's easier said than done. If you want to help people, you want to go over here and help this person, go over there and help that person, go over there. Sometimes your balance gets thrown off. You become overwhelmed. You get crabby, frustrated, um, and sometimes you fail because you've not done a very good job at maintaining those uh, maintaining all of those items that you've placed onto yourself, right? And so I can't say how you guys would do it, but how I create balance is not putting too much on me, okay? Learning to let certain projects go because I know that I don't have the time. Um, Learning the use of the word no is important. Okay, I've always said this has been a principle that I've incorporated. To bite me off, that I've incorporated on myself for many many years is that I don't I try not to accept what I can't handle. I try not to, as they say, stick my foot in my mouth by saying, oh yeah, I'll do it, and then I can't do it. I've learned to not do that. I've made mistakes in the past by doing that, and I've learned from those mistakes. And I've also had to learn not to punish myself or feel bad because I can't save the world, right? If you have that complex, I don't know if I necessarily had a complex, but maybe a variation thereof. But if you're the kind of person that has that concept in which dog wants to go inside. Let me let this dog inside. I think she's thirsty. Sorry, be right back. Come on, girl. You want to go inside? Now I alert that other one, the noisy one. See, each dog's balance is different. You haven't heard my dog bark one time, but you heard this one. A great example of balance. The balance of this dog is totally different than the balance of my dog. My dog don't get easily stirred by anything, even when she hears, people on the other side. But this dog's balance is totally different, and everything disturbs this dog. So anyway, great example. Um, so learning the word no, right? Learning to not extend yourself out more than what you can do. And sometimes that contributes to some of our failures, right? Not balancing properly. And so you know that you've got this commitment over here and you know that you're responsible for it. And maybe you forgot about another commitment. Um, and it just got let go. So, what are some tools that we can use in helping us to create balance? You have great things like calendars now. I've learned to use my calendars in my phone. All these smartphones that we have, and we're not using it for all the smart tools that are available. So, how does this balance you spiritually, though? Isn't that outside of your body? Well, you've imbalanced yourself inside. Okay, so you've thought that you could. Juggle these multiple tasks that you've assigned to yourself, and it was not enough time in the day to get them done. And so you fail in your life. You may fail if you don't learn to, number one, say no when people may need you. Sometimes you can't balance your life and theirs. Okay, because if everyone is balancing their own life, that means that we're not imposing our will on other people. We're keeping everything at a good even rate to where I may not have the need to pull on someone else's resources in order to support my own. Okay. um, Keeping a calendar is so important. I think start using your smartphone. If you're the kind of person that got to see it, get a small little pocket calendar or a big calendar at home that has the dates on it and all these nice little slots and times where you can write down what it is that you're supposed to do. Um, because some of us are balanced within each other, that an internal bell goes off to say, I know I'm supposed to be doing this at this time. I know I'm supposed to be doing that. Oh, I'm supposed to go do this. But some of us jumbled up and forget, So sometimes you have to write it down or put it in a place that will create reminders, like your phone. You can create reminders in your phone now that says, um, I can put a reminder that says 1 hour before, 1 day before, and gives you the opportunity to remind your reminder. So that way you don't overextend yourself, because what happens is when you overextend yourself, even though you might be a kind-hearted person, you might begin to get the reputation with others that you're trying to build with, that you're not reliable, or you say you're going to do things and you don't, which some of us have that bad habit of. We tell people, I'm coming, I'm going to come to your function, or I'm going to come support your cause, and won't come. And sometimes I tend to think that it's a selfishness on some people in which that could be part of it, but the other part of it is um, too many commitments. So, what are some good spiritual texts that help us to give balance? I like the Hindu and Buddhist concept of chakra. I've been studying that for a little bit. And if you put in Hindu chakra system and search it, you could begin to learn. And this is where some of the concepts of Kabbalah were drawn as well. But chakra is a little bit different. Kabbalah has a lot more components to it, which is interesting to study. But chakra, if I look at this particular diagram, it goes from the crown of your head to just above your anus. Okay. It says the crown of your head is formless, supreme light. Between the eyebrows is the intellect, the throat is the spiritual drive, right of the physical heart, love, compassion, drive, respiration. Navel is the seat of the willpower, power, drive, digestion. Above, behind the genitals is the sensual drive and reproduction. And just above the anus is the material drive and elimination. So that's one model, right? I'm not going to go into that too deep. I'm just trying to give you some helpful tools to start off with when you're trying to find that balance. Now, if we go into the Buddhist chakra system, just a little bit different. Chakra system. This one is shaped a little bit differently, and it has some very similar concepts. Let me see if I can pull up a larger picture of this. I want to look at your picture. So I'll zoom into this. I cannot zoom into this picture better, but let me see if I can get a picture. I'll try to pull up this human frequency. That's another good one to look at. Women, and some of these show that the chakra is different for women between men. Oh, so much information on this, but I kind of like this picture because it also, interestingly enough, showed the medical staff. Let me see if I can find this picture. This person has embedded it on their page. I can't get to it. Tibetan chakras. Sorry, just trying to pull up an image so I can just at least read to you the general. Okay, that's another language. Oh, I think I better go back. So sometimes you can pull up something and don't have nothing to do with what you're looking for. Gotta be careful. Gotta read it. Make sure it's pulling up what it is that you're looking for. So try this again. All right. So maybe I'm not gonna get the cute little picture, but maybe I. These books was out of their mind. All right. So I can read this one a little bit better. Okay, so this one goes a little bit deeper. Another one was just an image, so it may not be all of the images, right? So this one talks about the chakra system movement and function. So you have the chakra, pineal or crown, spiritual source. So as you can see, this one is even a little bit different than the other one I put up. And so it says it goes in a clockwise form. It's the fastest spin. So it causes the pineal or the crown. That's your spiritual source. The pituitary is the gifts of the spirit. So as you can see, the spiritual is in a little bit different place. It goes clockwise. The thyroid, which is higher purpose, is clockwise. It also has colors assigned to it that I'll read to you. Okay, sorry, go back up. So the pineal or crown is the spiritual source. It rotates clockwise. It's the fastest spin. Its function is divinity, the source of divine consciousness, ultimate state of awareness, and its color is bright white. The pituitary is the gift of the spirit. It goes clockwise. So we're talking about, look at the clock, whichever direction the clock goes in. Clockwise is one way, counterclockwise is another. Opposite of clockwise. And so the pituitary is the gifts of the spirit. So this doesn't really necessarily go by, I mean, it goes by the body, but not in the same way as the Hindu chakra. It stands for, or its function is perfected humanity, oneness of the spirit to the oneness of life, governs wisdom, knowledge, and channeling abilities, and its color is violet. The thyroid is the higher purpose, clockwise. Spiritual physical nature is its chakra function. The balance center blends spiritual will with physical choices, and its color is royal blue. So, it's interesting how this incorporates colors. If you know anything about colors and elements, you know that different elements give off different colors when they're either on fire or they're made to move in motion and different uh, chemical ways to alter them to give off light. We've done some of these tests in my biology and chemistry classes, which is interesting. So you have the thymus or the heart that goes clockwise. Its physical purpose as above, so below, governs the implementation of the spiritual blueprint. Its color is emerald. The adrenal is the master of physical life. It rotates clockwise. Its spiritual purpose links the physical embodiment to the spiritual blueprint. Yellow with green border. So it's multicolored. That's a border to it. The pancreas, spleen, spiritual abundance, counterclockwise. So this is the first one that's rotating the other way, getting to the lower portion of the body. Physical maintenance, rejuvenation, maintains the spiritual DNA within the physical, and this color is a more pumpkin color. And the root, which is a spiritual grounder, rotates clockwise as well. It's the slowest spin, and it is security, governs physical health, well-being, and survival. It is deep red. And so the Buddhist concepts are a little bit different than the Hindu concepts and its descriptions. Um, and there's just so many different ones. And that one could even be described being a variation of the Buddhist chakra system, but it's so hard to tell because there's so many of them. That one is in Hinduism. Let's see if I can look at this one. I just find chakra very interesting because it does relate more to energy, and I believe in energy as being a divine force. It is possibly um, the source to creation. I think this one is more for Buddhism because Buddhism usually has a symbol with the. And it's, the good story is of the Buddha. I like that story of the Buddha. It's very interesting. Um, the Buddha originally was a man that ascended. Um, and it's just good. It's a good read. It's a good read, whether you believe it to be myth or whether you believe it to be true. It's a good read. It gives information about that. So I'll try to include some of these different items for you to start looking at. I don't favor one over the other. They're just going to lead you to different things. I mean, you've got Pinterest all up in this now. So another picture that I found that described the chakras in the more Indian terms, because a lot of these were birthed out of India. Um, you have the Sahasrara, the Ajna, the Wishhuda, the Anahata, the Manipura, the Swadhisthana, the Muladhara, and it goes on to talk about the different type of yogas that are available. Yoga is a central theme in the concepts of either Buddhism and Hinduism, and they stem from each other. I believe Hinduism was first, and from Hinduism came Buddhism, if I remember the story right, because I believe Buddhism didn't agree with some of the casting system of Hinduism that was created, and so it branched off. It branched and so, there's some information on balance, some additional information on balance. Is it the only thing on balance? No. I think if you're interested, Kabbalah is also another interesting study in balance that could possibly help those who may want that additional help um, because it incorporates the different parts of the body that we don't always get to study in some of the other main religions. The other main religions kind of deal with exoteric ideologies, and the more Eastern philosophies deal with, I believe the term is esoteric. Um, so you have esoteric and esoteric. Let me just look at the terms here. Esoteric. Esoteric, ESOTERIC, intended for likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest or interest. And exoteric is intended for or likely to be understood by the general public. Okay, so exoteric versus esoteric. So if I had to describe, I guess they both could kind of intertwine because, I mean, if you're studying the hidden secrets of the inner body, then maybe only a small group could get it. If I just describe religion, I would say that's more esoteric because only a small group of people have the infinite knowledge. If I was to describe it, could be wrong, but that's how I would describe it. But anyway, but exoteric could also describe the fact that God lives outside of the body and not within us. And esoteric meaning more God lives inside of the body. So anyway, like I said, I feel like just reading the definitions, they could be interchangeable. Um, but looking up Kabbalah real quick, since we're coming close to the end of our time, and the bugs are berating me at this point, but I love being out here. Kabbalah. Kabbalah's origins. Let's read the origins so we understand. Hebrew literally parallel corresponding, that's its meaning, or received tradition, is an esoteric method, discipline, and school of thought that originated in Judaism. So, enter. A traditional Kabbalist in Judaism is called a Mekubal. Isn't that interesting how it's part of the Jewish tradition? Do the Jewish still believe this? Do they still practice this and widespread? I would say probably not. I think they leave it to the mystics to perform this because it's considered a very heightened level of awareness, as I've read it. So let's look for Kabbalah diagrams. So the Kabbalah diagram is sometimes placed on the human body, but it more looks like this. I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme, but it more looks like a tree branching out to. That's not even a good description. I'll put a picture up for you all, but it's kind of like a point system in a way, but sometimes it gets mapped over the human body, right? As you can see it, but on human anatomy, I have to use those. I like the ones that's branched off on human anatomy because it kind of shows the centers. Mhm. There's a lot of writings on this because at one point in time it was very popular to study it. It was mystical, spooky, and so it's changed over time. All right, so when I pull this up, and I've actually drawn these diagrams in books that I have when I was studying, trying to learn. This one is described as the 10 Surfriot. I don't even think that's the right one. Here's the Kabbalah one. I don't know if I'm gonna get one over the human diagram, so I'm gonna stick to its original drawings. And it's even brushed out since I've been reading because you had some really typical diagrams. Let me see how this one looks. Yeah, this is the one with the terms on it. So it is. I think they're all worth studying because they give you some interesting information on the human experience. Squirrels and the birds running around. Um, they all have some interesting uh, origin stories and have branched off. You even have some of them that have the original um, Hebrew language as part of it and the translation to show you what they mean. So that gave me a chance to practice writing in Hebrew. Which of course I don't understand the language because I haven't taken the time to study that. But just I'm gonna have to go. I used to look that up because I'm not finding the diagram. It's the most common. And I do not have access to the drawings that I've made. Books. I'm just trying to find some of the original drawings. I have to find them later. That's a big wasp. Alright. Ooh. Okay, who goes to more? And it's funny because I began to run into this when I started looking at the tree of life. Because I had an interest in where is the tree of life? Where does that all come from? What is that about? And it became interesting what I was able to find. I'm hungry, y'all. I need to go eat. I haven't eaten my one meal yet. I try to do one meal a day. Sometimes I'm up to two, but most of the time it's one meal a day. I have to say, he said he eat too much. And I'm starting to believe it. I think it's weird. Explain to me. I just love looking at ancient symbols. Okay, so at the top you have the Kether. So you have like a circle and it branches out like this. To one side you have the Bina, the other side you have the Chakra. So beneath the Kether you have the Da'ath, and not necessarily connected, but below that, connected to the Bina and the Chakma is the Gabura and the Chaset. Below the Da'ath you have the Tiferet, and that's connected to the Gabura and the Chaset. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I show you simple. So the Da'ath is kind of isolated, but it's connected to the Kether and it's connected to the Tiferet under. The Tiferet is branched out, and all of these are interconnected, but the Da'ath is the only one that kind of is isolated from the sidebars. The rest of them are all interconnected. Um, so the Tiferet branched off to the Hod and the Nitzak. Below the Tiferet is the Yesod, and below the Yesod is the Malkuth. And I've seen some with even more details than this one is even showing me. But that's just some concepts, and sometimes a place of the body and we connect it to the head, the throat center, and all that. And it shows you how it translates over. So when you're establishing balance, it's going to take a lot of study. I'm sorry, my sinuses are killing me. It's going to require a lot of study, um, discipline. Balance requires discipline for sure, because you're learning to when to say no and when not to say no. You're learning to um, create schedules. You're learning to not overwhelm yourself, um, and know how to work or operate within your limitations. You know, we want to be unlimited. We want to be everything, and especially women. We could be very guilty of this. I think men do a better job at this than we do, and that's not always in every case. But I would say overall, if I had to judge it, I think men do a little bit better by not taking too much on their plate and doing what they can. And I think it's just by their nature, like, nah, bro, I don't feel like it, right? And women, we're like, oh, I'm mommy, I'm super mom, and we have that ability in us for just being Wonder Woman, and we want to be it all. And sometimes it's just better to be and not to worry about doing so many things for so many different people and being everything for everyone. You're not quite what you need to be for yourself. Okay, and that's so important. Um, Balance is very detailed, even more on the surface. I think it requires a lot of personal thought into who you want to be as an individual, um, what you want to exhibit as your attributes, what you want to be your strengths. Um, it requires for you to uh, do a lot more internal thinking and not think so outside of self in this case. So balance requires more self perception than external perception. And that can be hard for people who are parents because you constantly have to be thinking about the little ones and your teenagers and your family. But I think if you learn to do this, it will be better for them in the long run because you're not placing yourself in situations where you're becoming overwhelmed and then you're lashing out at everybody. Mommy or daddy's or brother or sister was crabby today. Um, it just changes your patience level, I think. And we're all a work in progress, right? So as I'm saying these things, I'm reminding myself to incorporate these things. It's not that I necessarily know every single component of it, but I think I've become very, very well balanced and masterful of balance. I think I've mastered self manifestation better than balance, because sometimes I do tend to overwhelm myself, but taking on too many obligations. But I've learned to curb that over the years. But as far as uh, uh, manifestation, if I had to judge between which two are stronger, I would say manifestation is stronger uh, in me. I've learned to create. I've learned to draw energy, and I've learned to um, make those changes. Sometimes the energy that I draw in is not necessarily positive energy, because sometimes I can draw negative energy in as well. But that's the balance of life. These things all tie in together, because in drawing in energies, and if I draw in a negative energy, I look at it as a exercise in my ability to again get back to balance. So if I manifest the negative energy, then I have to balance it with the positive, right, and even it out. So you see, they work together. That's why I named this show Manifestation and Balance, because I think they work together. So when you manifest something, if you manifest what you didn't originally intend to, you're like, oh, that was an unintended consequence. I didn't mean to do that, because you're still learning to control those energies that you're bringing into yourself. Um, then the other side of it is learning that balance, that helps you to say, okay, that wasn't what I wanted exactly. How can I make it different by making that change internally, so that I don't manifest those things that are unwanted? I hope that makes sense, because they play with each other, and then they're separate. They're separate principles, but they tie in to each other. And so, do you agree? I think that was an agreement. I think that was an agreement. That gentle breeze felt so good. Some of us want to believe that we can have control of the wind, control of the elements, if we delve into a deeper level. It would be awesome to learn that level. I'm not sure if I'll learn it in this life, but if I can begin to master some of these things, and move some of the things that I have on my plate out of the way, then maybe I will be able to return and begin to study those control of the elements. Nothing's impossible to me. And I've made so much of the impossible possible in my own life. Things that some people just don't realize that they can do, I have done. Um, and so I know it's possible, and I know that I have that power. But I hope this show helps everyone. I hope that you learn something from listening to my shows. I'm learning so much, even just doing the shows, returning back, listening, going back, doing a little bit more researching, and making it available to you based on what I know I've done over time. And so we're coming to a close. We're at our 2 hour mark, and I try not to go over 2 hours, because I'm already criticized for my shows being long enough. But two people stuck in here with me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you learned. If there's anything that you want to contribute, just email me. You got my email. Let me know. Call me. Let me know. We'll talk about it. But I'm just here to share what I've learned, what I perceive as my wisdom onto you. And as I'm a student in life, we can take this journey together, because I'm not the expert. I'm a student. I'm in perpetual student mode. So thank you for coming. And I will see you all next show. Peace.